Everybody's here. And, with that, I will ask you to join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. Flags in the back of the room. Pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
And the next item on the agenda is Administrator and Director's reports. Bill?
All right, my principal report for Clearwater Valley Elementary. We continue our partnership with the Upriver Youth Leadership Council and its programs to support our students and families. I joined the group and meet monthly to go over plans to see how they can continue to support our community. They provided 3 days at Snow Haven and 3 movie nights. The soft opening for their teen center in Kuski will be the 28th, with their grand opening on April 1st. They will serve students aged 13 to 18 years old with a tween time once a month. Tomorrow, children's author Jarrett Pasaska will present his story to our students from 1:30 to 2:30 in an assembly in the gym. He will present one of his books to each student who was in attendance that day. We will follow up with a smaller workshop for the students. He's also hosting a book signing and parent evening in our library from 5 to 7. I will be in attendance to introduce him and support the community event. Our book fair is also going on this week, and kids are really excited about that. Elk City just returned from a conference for Elk City where we partner with small schools like Elk City to be a professional resource to each other. They are looking for school districts that have student populations 800 or less. Elk City is kind of unique. This is not something that the entire school district is involved in, only Elk City, because they have that teacher with the unique K-8 environment, and she partners with a teacher over in Washington, their K-8. There are also small districts that have one English teacher in the district, and so they collaborate with English teachers through other states and collaborate with them. It involves Idaho, Montana, and Washington. Elk City is being highlighted by the state of Idaho as a model school for their SWIP, which is their school-wide improvement program. The theme for the conference I attended, the keynote speaker came from his book, Relationships, Leadership, and Partnership. In his book, it highlights the importance of relationships, the trust that builds from those relationships, and the need to maintain that trust in order to move forward and build successful schools for students. Just as a side note, when a principal leaves the building, like I did for 2 days, a lead teacher, counselor, or other designated staff is on call, which requires the bringing in of a substitute teacher for that day, so the staff member can be available to step into the principal's office and take care of things. After being gone for 2 days, my lead teacher said, and I quote, "I don't know how you get anything done." Technology report. Our application to the Emergency Connectivity Fund, which is a small part of the ESSER dollars, has been approved for $239,000. It's a project that I've been working on for about 6 months. This fund is intended to provide a modem installation and $50 per month for 1 year to families who currently cannot get an internet signal, have very poor signal, or unaffordable service at home. We are working on gathering info for these families and working with Airbridge, who was awarded the contract to start the build-out schedule and timeline to complete this project. One of the issues we have in our area is line of sight, getting a signal. There are 2 basic architectures, a couple huge towers in strategically placed locations that limits the line of sight. Airbridge has a multi-tier system where they have multiple smaller towers located in multiple different areas, so they are able to bounce line of sight to areas that you normally can't get to. I spoke with them, and they are staffed and able to do up to 200 installations per month. So we're just in the process of all that lined out. This money can only be used to pay for in-home internet service for families. This is not a pool of money that is available to the school district. So we just want to make sure that the school buildings are in need of upgraded intercom systems. Initially, I reported that I was getting an E-rate proposal that would cover 70% of the cost if funded. Interesting thing about E-rate is it's very complicated. And after a few emails and phone calls with our consultants, it was discovered that even though network wiring is a qualified item, there has to be a computer or a Wi-Fi device on the other end. Placing a intercom at the other end of that disqualifies the wiring. And therefore, that project, the conservative estimates are around $98,000 to bring our district up to date in our ability to communicate quickly to all staff in all buildings. CB Elementary has the only complete and updated system in our district right now. Intercoms are not just for those occasional general announcements about a canceled practice, but can be a vital tool in the event of an active shooter scenario. Integrating the intercom into your network and phone systems can only happen if all the devices are on the network platform. This will allow any staff who has the app installed on their phone to initiate an intercom all call directly from their personal phone from anywhere inside or outside of the building. Building these platforms and layering them to maximize their capability and the use of our tax dollars is just one aspect of the Director of Technology's duties. We've had an excellent track record over the last 10 years with virus and malware attacks. Ransomware, however, rare that it might be for school districts, still exists. Getting staff to save files in the cloud and migrate away from saving files to their computers and shared drives on our network leaves us vulnerable to such attacks. We will start migrating those staff to the cloud, limit our shared drives, create private VLANs on our network to isolate the exposure and minimize the risk. We constantly get phishing attempts, mostly through email accounts. We've done quite a bit of training with staff on what to look for and what not to click on. Despite all our efforts, every once in a while, they still click. Those phishing emails, they look very convincing, and they're coming from one of the leadership in the buildings, and so we continually work on that. I've spent time reflecting and gathering data to see where we have come in technology. When I started in 2012, we had ropely 650 computers, not all of them working, and maybe 80 other devices like iPads. Today, we have roughly 800 computers and laptops, 1,663 Chromebook devices registered in our Google for Education Management Suite, and 200 plus other devices that we support. When everything is running smoothly, it's not too bad. But on any given day, the sheer need for support for devices alone has quadrupled from when I started. Add the additional layers of support since I started for our camera and door security systems, wireless network, voice over IP systems, intercom, enhanced content filtering and recording, Google Chrome management, classroom audio visual support, vape sensors, disaster recovery plans, all the new features we support for our website, and the ICE reporting. That's the 70% of the money that we receive from the state. And you might get a better view of the complexity of the job and the time required. How does our district of 1,200 students spread over the largest geographic district in the state of Idaho compare? I visited with the superintendent of the Fremont School District at the RISE conference to see how they support their technology. They have 800 students on a closed campus with 3 buildings. They have a full-time director of technology and have teachers in each building stipend to help out as we did in years past. They are in the process of hiring a full-time building tech to support their full-time director of technology to meet their current needs. Orofino has 1,076 students at 6 locations. They maintain around 1,200 Chromebooks with teachers, staff, and students and spares, and estimate around 100 PCs, including office staff, support staff, and teachers. They have 4 technology staff responsible for IC reporting, testing coordination, all staff and student device support, and E-rate. That's my report.
Today we had our roll-up day. So roll-up day is when our 8th graders get to have a chance to come up to the high school, visit the high school, go for a tour. So our 8th graders commented they really appreciate that. I know they had some special things going on here at the high school today with an assembly, so our students got to be involved. It just gives them a great chance to get to know how things operate here. It's a very nerve-wracking thing for kids to move from one building to the next. So we kind of make that a priority throughout our whole building. Our kindergartners go check out the first grade rooms, first grade, second grade, all the way up. This is really an important thing for our kids in 3rd grade as they move over to a new building in the 4-5 hallway. Our 5th graders are very nervous about going to junior high, so it's a chance for them to go meet some of the junior high teachers and see the junior high hallway. We also now invite our preschoolers to come up to the kindergarten rooms, and gives us a good chance to get to know those preschoolers as well. Along with those preschoolers, we had a lot of them in the building this last week. We did our kindergarten registration. We had over 40 kids visit the school for kindergarten registration. We've kind of done a count with our preschools. We know there's about 45 kids. We usually have 10 to 15 other kids out in the community that don't go to preschool. So we are anticipating around 55 to 60 kindergartners next year, which is an increase from what we've had in the last couple of years. Into the 3rd quarter is coming up this Friday. So we're finalizing that. Kids are working hard on getting grades up, completing the assignments they have. We'll be getting a report card sent home after spring break. ISAT testing, which is that state standardized test. That window is open. We've started doing some of our small group testing with some of our special education students this week. We'll really hit it hard later on in April, and we'll finish that up in May. I believe the window closes May 14th. So we'll get all our testing done by then. Junior high track practices started. We have close to 60 kids, I think, now that are participating in junior high track. So that's been a nice increase and a lot of kids involved there. Thank you.
The other reports are in your guys' packets as well. It is backing up, and I just want to be very clear that an example today probably it'd take nearly the entire day just to try to get caught up on minutes. This is on top of trying to get bills paid, all of those accounts payable that she is in charge of, and a litany of other things. So anyway, there's the capsulization of that particular piece. I also connected with President Engage. They're the auditors for the school district to check. We continue to take some very negative swipes at Becky and the district around a forensic audit, stealing money. It's pretty sad to me that a lady that has been here 35 years, this is what she'll shoulder. I'm sure there's probably no way out of that for her. But in doing so, I thought it might be important for the board to know that President Engage would do basically a mid-year audit. They would check your cash flows and other receipts, effectively check all of those fund balances, perhaps give you a clean slate to appease some of the questions you're all receiving from different people. It is such a deep, entangled school funding. I won't even call it a mess, but at times it is a mess to try and have all of those school cash funds and those cash flows, so you guys can be up to speed on that. So we can talk a little bit more about that. I just present that to you as information. They are willing to do that. They have done that a few times at other schools. It would be they have worked with this school district, it sounds like, for nearly 30 years. And so they would be happy to try and do that as well. So unless you have some questions on that, I'll keep moving on. Thank you. I'd like some guidance from the board. And we have positions that are on hold. Some due to not having any applicants or suitable applicants. Where the board is feeling on the hiring process right now. Now, given, I'm going to also give you some presentation pieces around finance, which could be important for you to have, obviously, if you're holding on all hires. We basically, right now, we have Jem's principal open. A few candidates. We have Kendra's position open, 2 candidates. We need to chase after Michael Stevens, who's resigning from our tech coordinator. We haven't moved any further with the assistant transportation director. That wasn't hired. So I would really like to hear from the board of where you, if you want me to hold, perhaps minus the principal one, then I can hold. It's fairly precarious now because certain people that need to get on board to train, you're going to, you can go through the interview process, offer them a position pending board approval, which puts you, in this case, all the way, let's say, to the 18th of April for that board meeting. In Kendra's position, if that person had another job and they needed to put in notice at that job, that's going to put us probably mid-May, maybe second week of May before they can start. She'll already be gone. The biggest thing of concern is your IC reporting and the connection of what Joe does, Kendra, Paulie, Becky, Garing, all of our school secretaries is absolutely critical to school funding. Their attendance piece, and then the connective piece that has to go back to the teacher of record. Are they properly certified in that subject area? There's a number of moving parts that have to go through all of that. So I don't want to give them a nod for a position, and if the board says, hey, we're holding or not recommending, and have them put in notice until you've approved it. So it's it might come with the I'll come with the recommendation, but I'm going to have to hold them when they tell their other employer, you know, I'm looking to move on because I don't know for sure. So I just want to hear from you on that. Hold right now, Todd. Not easy.
Has Michael's tech job been advertised? Is there applicants for that?
No, it hasn't been advertised. He's with us through June, and so we'll have some time. You know, Joe just gave a pretty good reflection of the amount of assets that you have invested in technology in this district is really quite large. And then how you want to try and stay on top of that is going to be a part of the other management piece that you guys are going to have to work through. The cost of technology, the upkeep, upgrades. There's going to be even a harder one, just to throw a forecast. We'll call it 10 years from now, 8 years from now, when every one of those brand new Chromebooks is outdated all at once. And you're going to have to figure out the titration time, because more than likely, most districts would not be able to just buy 1,500 Chromebooks for one set. So.
I would say hold all but up north. That's my suggestion.
I would concur.
Okay, thank you. There was also some board input. Is there a question? Or you
Oh, I
want me to
just didn't
continue?
know if it had to go to vote or not, or if.
No, this is just in my report, trying to get it. Yeah, it's not a particular action. So, board had asked me to report on transportation and busing. You know, they obviously see extra buses in the transportation yard. So just wanted to update you on some of the research around that. There are a number of extra buses, and oddly enough, we are in the middle of the use of the majority of those due to unforeseen breakdowns, extracurricular activities that would impact those particular buses. I think the important piece to be clear is if you sold a bus, and we do sell buses, none of that money goes into the general fund. It all goes back into transportation, and then you would use that money to buy new buses, obviously. There are some particular buses that meet ADA requirements for kids in wheelchairs. And our district is large enough that we have to have an ADA bus that meets the nearly 70 passenger situation. And we have an ADA bus that meets the 30 passenger situation. So an example of that, a teacher that has a student in a wheelchair, they cannot not go on that field trip because they said they don't have a bus that's adequate for that particular student. We have to make it be adequate. So that is a particular piece there. The other important piece for the board to know is all of those buses are on depreciation schedules. It's a detailed process and how we cycle through those buses. That depreciation schedule is pretty important to you as you rotate through and buy new buses. The district over the last number of years has done a really good job at trying to purchase new buses in a timely manner every year or every other year, which leads to another positive reduction in maintenance outlay for repairs and whatnot for aging buses. So there's your update with that particular piece. The next update is really the financial piece. Does this match? One person today said how ugly this was. And I think it's important to note that I do this on purpose, and it drives my wife crazy, to see if anybody is really bold enough to say, that is really terrible. One of my staff today did do that. So other than my wife. I am a Garanimal type person. You know, you match the giraffe head with the giraffe bottom. All right, let's get into stuff where we want to hear. So here in your packet, what I've given everybody, and I'm going to push these up on the overhead, is some scenarios regarding the 21-22 shortfall, or so actually shoring this up. And here's the first scenario I can give everybody to the board. You can actually do nothing. The board can decide to allow for no cuts in the 22-23 school year, take all the cash flow money and cover the $1.7 million. So built into the forest funds, this will be what I call a bit of a hope solution. Mr. Smith has mentioned a number of times that we might get more money. Last year we did get some more money. We were smart and we used it. I have not heard of necessarily any more money coming in, but obviously the 1.7, I don't know how this district could get much lower than trying to push a 40% levy through in the need of what they've done over the years. But it didn't lose, kind of. It lost a lot, lost badly. And there are different particular pieces that I have gotten around that. Why not? But nonetheless, we're dealing with that right now. So I think the board really has to center on what are your goals for the district moving forward. When I came here 2 years ago, the goal moving forward was how can we continue to make Mountain View School District prosper? And one of those particular goals was trying to solve a funding solution, a funding element. That hasn't been very successful. Mountain View School District, though, hasn't necessarily has struggled with this for many years. It's not anything brand new, but there are large chunks of holdings that are kind of going away. And as many people know in this area, everyone kind of knows enough to be dangerous on forest funds. We have really basically lived off of forest funds. It's kind of been a gift and a curse all built into one. In this scenario, you could, again, not do anything. Status quo, everything could remain the same. You probably, you can move through the 22-23 school year, and then perhaps the board can do their work around what is the direction you want with your new superintendent and whatever new folks are on at that time. And this would allow the board to identify some goals over the next course of the year for you to travel that. And I just pose some questions here. If the board is going to say, we are done asking for levies, and that has been some of the mantra of this board, then the board needs to work on where are we going to find basically this other $3 million, because we've taken $1 million from forest dollars and bought that down. If that's a direction that this board's going to go, you really have to lockstep yourself and be united in the end game of this is where we're moving to, and then highlight how you're going to get there. With that will come some specific cuts to programming and obviously major school impacts. And you can't just do that in 1 or 2 meetings. So scenario 1 in all of this, and I'll get into some other scenarios here in a minute, is you could, in essence, just complete the cash flow. It wouldn't eliminate all of the cash flow. Remember, it was going to be around 2.2 million. You shaved it down to 2 million. So in essence, you could play this game with around a $300,000 cash flow piece. And the other reminder is the $1,050,000, which is 3 years authorization from SRS, from the forest funds. We've been told we're going to get that, but I have yet to see any verification that it's the piece of paper, right? The verification. So I don't really like to operate that particular way, but there hasn't been a reason for them to say that we're going to get something like that in the past. I've not heard from anybody saying that you wouldn't get it. So I want that asterisk in your mind that this is me just verbally being told through our county commissioners, Todd, it's coming. So I imagine the road department is very excited about their portion too, which is big. So any questions on this piece? So go ahead.
Do we have to have a 60-day reserve?
Nope.
No.
We don't. So I'm going to go real fast in this. This was something we delivered December 8th, how we really got to this balance left in finance. So this is our total expenditures, and this is the hard part that boards have to grapple with, is we are taking the expenditures to operate in the year that we're in, 21-22. You guys don't have this in your particular packet. This is what you had from 2 months ago. Yeah, and then B kind of extrapolated some of her pieces from this as well. So this is just reminding everybody the balance left to finance was 3.8. I'm going to show you again real quick how we got to the 4.1. Cost of inflation, which was a low number. There was raises built into that. And that's how you got to that particular number. This particular piece was still trying to drill down just this snapshot in big macro numbers. There's 40 or 50 pages layered behind this. It just keeps drilling down deeper and deeper. It's harder and harder to understand. So what Becky and I did, along with Casey and Melissa, we built this together in our budget review team and talked about how we came up with those total expenditures on the top and total revenue on the bottom. And again, the 3.8 is the same thing I just showed you. It's the 3.8. We haven't changed anything. It's still the need. And then what we did is we put a snapshot, even more detail. Again, trying to get to the total spending. We're breaking out cost to operate, all the way from certified, classified, administrative team. We continue to break down that $13.5 million need. The contingency at the bottom of 212,000. I'll call it this a little bit of a rainy day fund, something that occurs that could be catastrophic and there's an immediate need. That's not a lot of money for a district with a $13.5 million budget, but hopefully it gets you through the need of that. This is kind of that, we don't have boilers here, but the boiler blows up. Time we get working on that immediately. But in many times, I'm not talking about the situation where an insurance overlay would have that. I'm talking about some contingency that we hadn't planned for that we need to use that money for. This piece is the revenue piece. These are just our sources of revenue that come into place. About the fourth line down at the top, obviously the supplemental levy is there isn't anything to put there. And so that's where we're trying to make up the 9.6 to equal that 13.5. All of these particular pieces play a deep part. Salary-based apportionment. There are all sorts of funding pieces back to the IC report. How well educated our staff is helps with state funding. How many kids are in the seat helps generate state funding. All of those things equal a report that someone like Kendra and Polly and all our secretaries and Joe are all working on to make certain those things are accounted for so that we maximize our total revenue. As you can see, extracurricular gate receipts, about $109,000 what we make off of that over the course of the year. This sheet just outlines, again, how we get to the shortfall, how we spent some of the money. We put in $3 million of federal forest funds. We've funded about 8 teachers out of the COVID-19 piece, some nurse and tech materials. And then you can see those 3 funds really make up that 3.8 loss. This particular piece is how you may decide to save some dollars if you go down this route. The total cost of operations at the top, 13.5. CPI inflation adjustment, we put the 2.3%. I think we all know that that would be short right now today, but that's what we put in there. And if the in terms of the M&O, there's a little dash there, it shows ESSER salaries and benefits 3%, 310,000. That could be an area that obviously you would cut. That you would have a salary freeze, benefit freeze, in light of all of these other cuts, I presume. I would recommend that you have a salary freeze before you cut a program or you cut teachers. That's what I would say should be in front of that. And then there's a projection of growth that's budgeted for other state, federal funds. That's all asterisk. All of this is an estimation of what might happen at the state level for our funding. And then last, just as a final recap, how we got to the 4.1 was the supplemental levy. Remember, we were talking, it was about 3.8. We had some inflation in there, raises. That's how 4.192 ultimately came up. In the end, what we did was drive it down to 1.7, and the 1.7 really came out of remaining COVID dollars, applied SRS dollars, and that basically came up with the 2.7-ish million dollars for us to run the levy at the 1.7 that we had. This particular piece in there in your packet is, this is, the levy accounts for, again, as a general reminder, give or take 27 to 30% of your budget. And I just tried to make this a little more concise for you. This is in the back of your packet. The large one. I did. I'm sorry. I just took what we just went through, those projected expenditures, your projected revenue, and then what the local support would be. And really the gray area just shows what you have to run for to obtain that budgetary amount. Again, all estimates, there'll be more clarity about the 20th of April when things start to finally shape up at a legislature, and you'll have better funding numbers that will even give more clarity around this. So this is the question I asked back to the board, is trying to get your goals set for what are your initiatives moving Mountain View School District forward. What are the, if a levy is never going to work here. So this is a question I ask you. If 40% of the levy request doesn't pass and it fails miserably, is there a percentage that will pass ever? I think having those particular goals and initiatives to move it forward are going to provide clarity, transparency that our community wants to see. And then you can start pitching that to them for here, just a matter of months. This is what we need to go after. Right now, if the reauthorization of forest funds continues to happen, you'll have this year, the 1 million, and you'll have 2 more years with basically 1 million in each of those. This is just a projection of the levy breakdown in terms of how our general fund piece impacted the $1.7 million failure. This is just levy. So when I tell you that levy accounts for 30% of our total general fund budget, and you see 41%, I'm just showing all of our community and board that the 41% is basically what we tried to run it at. At 100%, you needed basically the 4 million, 4.1. And we tried to run that at about 41% of the need. Forest funds, not telling you anything. I bet anybody in town here could probably tell me about what they think forest funds have meant to them or the impacts. But as I look back over a great number of years, this district has saved millions of dollars with forest funds being applied to buy down the levy. Millions of dollars. If they truly were probably applied as they're intended, I wouldn't say we'd have to have new schools, but I'd say everything would be pretty much state of the art. Your schools would be, if you were applying them in a manner that useful for the maintenance pieces, you really would, it'd be pretty fantastic. Here are some of the areas that in no certain order, this is going to be a little hard for people to see in the back, so I will talk loud. Here are areas of cuts to come up with $1.7 million. I don't put them in any order. I'm not going to recommend to you what order you may want to do this and how you want to come up with those particular pieces. The very first one is extracurricular. So all I have to do is think of me. You could save by cutting extracurricular activities roughly around $375,000. Now, as I visit with my leadership team, not all fees are generated for you to be a drama kid or FFA. They pay some fees in there, but there's not the pay to play. $92 for a kid to play sports, a sport. You're trying to cover that. That moves to, that number is $479 a student for a sport. If you just say, we're not going to cut that, but we're going to pay to play. I just took a number that my leadership team generated with the number of participants, and I could only imagine many would jump off because they couldn't afford that. If you're a 3 or 4 sport kid, you would have wanted to say yes to the levy. It would have been a bargain. You would have saved money. So however you want to slice that, that's a number that you could try and slice up. The next one right below that is place a 3% increase in salaries. I showed you that in the budget overlay. You could save by freezing that $310,000. Furlough days. This hurts everybody in the district. I just put a number together, 5 furlough days. We spend about $50,000 a day, give or take, on salaries. 5 furlough days gets you $250,000. Where would we take them? I would say I would, as much as I hate to take it from professional development, because I hate to touch into instruction, I'd preserve instruction, take less than everyone's contract by 5 days. So everyone will put in a week of pay to cover that particular shortfall. You could say 10 days, Todd, 10 days gets us $500,000. You're right, it does. Now what you're pushing on is you have to remember there are prescribed seat times and instructional time that students have to have in order to meet accreditation. Ms. Kendra is a wizard at this. She gives me right down to the minutes. For instance, in this scenario, our seniors always are real close. Like we have a couple snow days built in. You start getting into the 3 or 4 days, we're going to have to add some time for those particular seniors. Partly because they get out a few days early. It's real easy if you want to try and make that work for a first grader. They're way over. Staff reduction. I'm not offering any particular area of cut. I would say that each one of my leadership members, each one of my principals would provide. We talked about 1.5 at GHS, couple at CV High, 2.5 at GEMS. There's a number of staff sitting in this room and start to think about, well, is that me on that? Maybe. The particular piece here could be around $500,000 in savings as a guesstimate, depending on where those teachers come from or staff in general. I would say that through any retirements, resignations, you would be able to cover a portion of those, decide to go that route. Remember though, salary-based apportionment from the state clicks in here. So you can't just say, oh, we'll take 10 teachers. You get hit twice. You get hit, those teachers that are gone, and then you get hit by lots of salary-based apportionment that also provides funding for you. Your revenue then would also shrink. So kind of you get hit twice. There is a mechanism for salary-based apportionment that they do put into the budget, that it's kind of like the safety valve on an elevator. It can't crash to the floor in 1 year. when you have staff reductions. But you can't cut much further than 6 or 7. That's kind of why I put that threshold for you to understand. Another, I think, a very impacting piece, we eliminate curriculum adoption. Casey and Melissa may have been on the board at the time that they reintroduced curriculum adoption in Mountain View. I think it's been going on for 5 or 6 years, maybe more. There was a time that curriculum adoption had pretty much ended because of budgetary cuts, and probably some teachers could share that they were working out of some pretty old textbooks, materials, support materials for teachers. And I know there was one that was 1998 or something like that. It might have been the home economic piece where they had to re-up that. So I mean, we got our life out of them for sure.
So currently, this year's 21-22 is reading and math, right?
It's reading. Yeah, it's reading at the elementary, but we're holding. So it's a good question because there's $150,000 slated for this year. So I would say in a recommendation, if we could preserve some staff, hold. They've done a lot of work this year, so they're ready to pick. And of course, the company is ready for you to select and pay. So if you held, you could encumber this $150,000 and move it into 22-23 school year, and combine it with what I assume would be budgeted next year as well. You could have. That's how I came up with the 300,000.
Do we have that quote from the people that?
It'll no.
Is it 150?
It's going to consume it. Pretty certain.
Do we have any like piloting programs that we could do for the?
You know, I don't have an answer for you on that, but Cody would probably be on that. So that's how I came up with the 300,000 for the curriculum. Elimination of curriculum adoption, I guess, could be a hold on curriculum adoption, but you'd be taking 2 years and taking some tools out of teachers' hands for a few years. Four-day school week, I would say that, so in 2006, 2007, I guess, this district did quite a bit of work around a 4-day school week. And Becky happened to find that file and I looked through it, and at that time it was like a $50,000 savings. I know B has done some research on this a lot more than I have. I've not spent a lot of time on a 4-day school week, so I won't really try and claim that I know a lot. But from what little I do know, I was conservative. B is correct. A lot of estimates are around 5% savings. That number isn't around a 5% savings. I used around 2.5, trying to be very conservative. Could you, in fact, save some money by going to a 4-day school? I think you could save some money. I want to say a big maybe. There's a lot of work that goes into, would have to go into this, you know, the restructuring calendars. Supposedly there's better student attendance, ease in recruitment of staff, some more flexible teaching schedules. Some of the cons I've heard, it's not a large savings, decline in some academic performance for our low achieving students. Some of those vulnerable groups. Some other particular pieces have been some teachers that have worked in that with block scheduling. We're now PE teachers trying to do a PE class for an hour, you know, for 80 minutes or something like that. Kids just can't go. There's just not enough. They're pretty good in the next class, I would imagine, pretty tired. But it's a long day for them, and you are adding time to the day. I hate to be on that bus in December. You know, it's dark here at 4, so it'll be a long day for them. So I think there's a lot to root out in the 4-day school week. There are some pros and cons. And again, my research was pretty condensed just to get on, do some web search to see ultimately what it is. I think everyone seems to be fairly in agreement that it's not, since you cut one day off, it's not just a 20% savings out of your general fund budget. Casey had mentioned staff salaries for certified staff don't change. It does ride our hourly folks backs more because they may have an extended day, but they would lose whatever day you choose to have off. There's one less day of transportation. Still going to just have a bus morning and night, so you do. That's a big savings. You don't have a lunch program or breakfast program on one of those particular days. So that's what I found out about that. My little graph is that's about the sliver of what looks like you'd save in the total budget. I would just say supply area cuts, cutting back maintenance, custodial, district office, instructional materials, operations would save around 140,000. Half-day kindergarten, no savings right now. As our leadership teams, work together, part of that is a K1 combo. What would you need if you needed 6 sessions? Adam and I were talking about his prediction of still needing three teachers. They'd just be teaching 6 sessions. Some of that is us trying to do a little bit of forecasting, as you talked about tonight, with what's with the kind of a kindergarten roundup. Same thing, really, right now at CVE, we have 1 kindergarten teacher, and they would have 1 kindergarten teacher would do 2 sessions. I guess if we move to half day, so really don't see any big change there. I will say, reading about the legislature piece today, they're still kicking this can. I would have 2 weeks ago, I told you it was going to get funded, and it doesn't look like it might go. I'm a little worried about it. So I don't know if that's what you guys have read.
Yeah, what would be the cost savings if it did come through?
I think this, I don't know savings per se, but I think you'll see an addition to your budget.
Oh, that's what I meant, yeah.
I
So what
don't
additional
know.
revenue?
I don't know. It's a good question, but I don't think it's a Hail Mary tax.
Right.
There would be some savings. Over budget amount. This is another guess. So as I look back over the last 3-4 years, Becky's done a great job in the budgeting piece that has kept school district in the black. Meaning you close out the year and she's encumbered, and this is an average, 100,000 one year, 80,000 one year, 190,000 one year. So there's a possibility you could save with things that didn't get spent, usually in the form of supplies, some sort of a supply budget carryover, upwards of $150,000. Casey had mentioned again that maybe there's some American Recovery Program or possible dollars flowing back to schools. I will say that there has been some talk, perhaps something more coming, but there is no estimate for us. The legislature is done basically this week. They're going to have plenty of money left over, but it's not going to come through the school coffers that way. I will also say that there has not been any more work done around, will there be a funding model change to help schools like us that are struggling through passing levies? As you're probably aware, we're one of 3 in the state that failed their levies. There's a number of bond issues that did fail. So we're dealing with kind of the fallout of trying to make up these shortfalls. I also just put in your packet real quick, and I won't spend much time on this, just about what are some of the class sizes that the board should consider. You have not adopted this budget section yet. Generally speaking, the district will probably have very similar language to this, that you're going to try and achieve these particular goals. I think it is a great goal to have as a school board, to protect class sizes. Generally what happens when you are in budget shortfalls, and you're struggling to make the necessary revenue amount, we tend to see class sizes start to swell because you have eliminated certain teachers and you're having to combine classrooms and some combination classes. And the load just gets heavier and heavier for our teachers. If you want to experience 20 in kindergarten, come down, spend a few hours. You'll need a nap when you're done. Those primary teachers are true heroes. Not to mention the Martians of our junior high. Right? There's a whole nother can of worms. But anyway, this section, I'm hoping that we get through this next. I think you're going to see the 2000s as a chunk coming up. But anyway, this is it's in your packet just as a reminder of class sizes. I also put in here this is compiled by our leadership team, and everything in orange is a pay-to-play scenario. And overall, you're seeing close to 1,000 participants. This is pretty interesting. There's 925 participants in all things in our schools: FFA, drama, basketball, football. It's a combination of all of those things. And we have around 1,300 students. Now, you got to kind of even break that down a little further because a kindergartner is not playing varsity basketball, right? So when you take out the K4, we have some junior high. Adam has some big junior high numbers in volleyball. And at times we'll have to run more than just a few teams. You can see he's got 41 at gym, so we might have 2 or 3 teams down there. So lots of opportunities, I think, overall for our kids. And I like this graph to show what the current income is around, if you can read that, it's around $62,000, $61,000 in pay-to-play revenue for our kids. So that could be another spot for you to raise the pay-to-play. I gave you a number. If you were going to try and make up the entire shortfall, it basically probably wouldn't happen. Don't know how we could ask a student $400 and something for a sport. Just obviously divided that number to find the shortfall. One of the largest expenses is busing. It hurts us in a couple ways. It hurts us because they're what we call bad miles, transportation, meaning the school district doesn't get any reimbursement for that. And you're obviously paying no reimbursement for an hourly rate for a driver to not only drive, but sometimes sit or go overnight. There's certain particular pieces. The last piece in your packet, this is just for you to study. This is posted, our fees. This just talks about what the charge is if there was food service. Remember, that was all free this year. Rental for a music instrument. That's a kind of an interesting piece. $53 is the cost of a tuba is $2,000. I saw her. Was I close?
To the top of 5,000.
That's what I thought. Yeah, times 2.5. The other particular piece is the top part, student extracurricular activity fees. This hasn't been changed. You have to be really careful just arbitrarily making a fee change. There are notices you have to put out. You have to allow for community input. As long as you stay and continue the same way, you don't have to do that. I don't know all the particular steps around that, but you hire it, you have to then step through some, I don't know if you remember any of those.
Is it anything over 5%?
There is a percentage, and I'm not sure what clicks that in. Part of that is there is a lawsuit around having kids bring supplies for school, like you're gonna bring all the Kleenex, you're gonna bring some toilet paper, and you need to bring hand towels. Well, the lawsuit was that school should be providing those particular pieces of those miscellaneous items for them in the class. So parents got on board, there was a lawsuit, so you have to be careful with how you raise that. Other than that, probably the district bus billing rate per mile. I know some of our principals will look at that. Right now it's $2.22 a mile. You can see all of a sudden rolling down to Boise in the big yellow runner is expensive. It's expensive. Now, we obviously cover those things if they're going to state or if they've made divisional playoffs, things like that. But heck, our football team went where? Yeah, so, and I think 2 years ago, was it like Soda Springs or somebody? 2 years in a row. Oh, okay, a long ways away, 2 years in a row. And so obviously you can't predict those particular pieces that'll happen, but just as an example of the expense. That's all I have.
Sure. We're doing your, trustee reports.
So I was asked to do the help with superintendent search. Larry's been helping as well. And so we have a timeline. The application period estimated to open March 28th. On Wednesday, we're going to be talking, she's gone today and tomorrow, it's their spring break. So Wednesday, we're going to be talking about the final brochure and the final timeline, just approval. So I would just like your guys' feedback on this. So district to post position information on its website and any other online resources, possibly March 28th. Application deadline, April 29th. I don't know if you guys feel like it might be earlier, but I suggested maybe giving a month. Yeah.
Before you move on, is there an issue with respect to cost or anything like that if we leave open till filled?
I don't know.
I guess my question is typically in the past, as far as, designing what the brochure looks like, or making the determination of when it opens, closes, working on the application form, that's normally been something that the whole board does together in a work session with ISBA. So my understanding that we're moving away from that, and you guys are meeting with them? I'm just asking.
Yeah, that's fine. We're using the exact same one from last time. We just changed the numbers, and she asked if we should add the salary, and I said a salary range. So that was the only changes that were made to the previous one, since we just did it a year and a half ago.
So B's been doing this, she usually does a great job of staying on top of things.
Oh, yeah, that's not a problem.
My preference would be that we do you suggest, or at least discuss it as a whole, as far as we have it put together at the workshop, which is in 2 weeks. That would be probably no surprise.
I think in the past too, as they've developed the drafts, they've sent it around to the entire board to look at, to just make sure there isn't something that they want to done differently.
Exactly. So
Do you guys want to look at the brochure? I can log into my email and pull it up if you want.
yeah, save it for the workshop.
Okay, it's March 21st today, and so if we were to get the next workshop, what would the date of that be? Right, and so that would put us out a little bit, and we're already behind. We're already behind the docket for getting our names out there. So I don't know if you guys would just want to, it's truly the exact same one. Just the sort.
We would have the opposition, right, Jim, would have had on the cases. Do you remember the packet that we put out for the application? I mean, if we just changed the dates and didn't do anything overnight, I'm not.
I need to change the pictures. So recent, but. How do you guys, Lacey, Casey, how do you guys? I'll pull it up in a minute here once the computer gets in. Just so you guys can see it. So then the applications would be presented from the ISBA. Melissa, you've already gone through this in Casey, so you guys know if you guys want to add anything to this process. So then we would decide which candidates on the, let's see, the 11th, which is a Wednesday. And then they could do reference checks, and then we could possibly get the interviews going May 18th.
As long as they don't need to have their own approval from the board on any of that.
Yeah, is it May 18th is your board meeting, right?
Well, I'm just saying, for us to get through the ISBA, just, do we have to have action on that?
I just believe you.
May 16th.
Okay. Yeah, I believe you settle on your dates. Let's move forward. And then any, obviously, you'd have an adoption through action of, you know,
Better off to get it going and get it moving forward. And if it's the same as it was last time we went through it, I don't. It's the other nice job.
Right.
I've done the truck.
I mean,
All right, so this is the brochure.
That's what your top page is.
They're not actually updated on this one. I sent them to update this, so this is the only thing that I changed. I sent those 4 stats to them.
As long as we update this time, such. The rest of it's just about like the community and stuff, right?
copy of that last. Oh, that's true. Mhm. We'll just have to get rid of that last bullet right there.
That's not. Don't you?
Yeah.
So I think we should have it on there.
I guess one is on that subject. We will look at the one above. It's wondering, I mean, as you've mentioned, it's no secret what happened to Livingston. I'm just wondering if it would be a more generalized statement, something in the language of as something that doesn't like something that just says, as do all schools in Idaho or something like that. Just make a general statement without throwing numbers out there.
You could say something that requires supplemental levy of whatever percentage of students taking it.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. As far as we're talking about weeks of adjustments, are one of the first things that my wife and I first noticed when we drove through town was the 10 commandments on the courthouse lawn. I wonder if we couldn't find a way after to just insert something about having a strong and vibrant faith community or something like that. That's a big draw for a lot of people. I think. We're not doing more specific than that. Well, as long as you're not specific to a trend in favor or say particular or sect, calling it a faith community is pretty broad. It's just a thought, but I almost guarantee you people who aren't used to seeing that, like where we came from, you never see that. And it's like, oh, look at that. That does have to do with the character of our community.
We good?
We see the very bottom.
You know what, my Idaho certification was quick because it gave me an alternative one. I already had my pen. But then I had the 3 years to finish the math portion and then the Danielson evaluation, another 3-credit graduate class. So we had 6 credits there. And then Danielson one for superintendent probably took me 3 months, I guess, work on over time. And then the math one was a summer with a bunch of number of teachers. Yeah, Joe and I and another teacher drove together. Yeah, it was a week long.
And only because I wasn't involved in process, the district supports you financially in that at all?
You know, for half of that, you did, yeah, for the credits, because you have, a credit piece that you could submit for in policy. It's that way for staff to be better educated.
You want to put that on there? Something.
I don't know if that would be critically important, although I would say when you're visiting with that person, perhaps in your contractual times, if they're already they already have an Idaho certification, that course meets that point. If they're an out-of-state person, I knew already that there was going to be some obligations to move it to the Idaho certification. So I knew that there'd be a 3-year window of time for that. Yeah. And I just got mine done in the first year. I think the important piece though is the Danielson evaluation model is important for them to be trained and know it, right? Because they're evaluating their administrators with that Danielson, having that Danielson background, right? Because each administrator, that's how they evaluate their teachers. And so you've got to have lots of knowledge around that to have a conversation.
That's obviously a different date.
Right, yep. We just needed to confirm the timeline and then go from there. And then their starting date we had for July 1st. Would you suggest any overlap with you?
You know, I would just say I came down to 3 or 4 meetings in May and June. Once you're done, and the overlap was whatever so that person could certainly meet, and I'd be happy to help. But it didn't say it on there. They provide some overlap. And I guess the other particular piece, if someone needs to reach out with a question after that particular date.
Excellent. So I have those changes. So are you guys okay if we move forward with that? For sure, I can bring the final one. I can send it to Polly, the final one, and she can email it to everybody.
Yeah, can you do that?
Yeah, for sure. Just one more thing. Last Wednesday, I went down to the Boise State Career Education Fair just to get our name out and just so people could start hearing about our district a little more. And so there's like 150 graduating teachers. And I was so excited to see so many. And then I talked to, I think it was Meridian, and they're like, oh, well, we need to hire 300 this year. So I was like, oh, okay. And after we did our presentations and after we had 2 hours at the table where kids actually came and talked to me a lot. I have 20, not kids, sorry, teachers at my age, I feel like they're kids, but anyway, qualified teachers that came to my table and wanted me to take their name and number and their resume because they knew Grangeville or they love rural and they loved the presentation of all the recreation opportunities that we have here. So yeah, so just wanted to report on that. And it didn't cost the district anything. Just
All right, we're gonna go ahead and take a break for 10 minutes, get up, stretch our legs and the lights. So I'll see you back here in the.
Larry, I just really have just a super quick.
Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't
report.
know you had one. Go ahead, please.
I just wanted to say how proud I am of some young gentlemen in our community. We had coffee with the superintendent last week on, what night was it? Monday night?
It was
Thursday?
Oh,
My days run
doesn't
together.
matter.
It was a day last week, I promise you. And we had 2 current high school juniors and one graduated, a young man that graduated last year who's enrolled as a freshman in college. And they spent the entire hour and a half
A little long.
talking to us about what's going on with their school district, what's going on with the budget. What can they do? And asked a lot of questions. And I just want to applaud them because I know a lot of adults that may not, and the one that's a freshman in college is an adult, but a lot of us older adults would not have taken that much time, and they really cared and they really wanted to know, and they asked some good questions and they gave some good insight, and just want to say I'm proud of them. So we enjoyed talking to them. Yeah, they were the only 3 that showed up. So, but
So please don't forget, we do have coffee with the superintendent where you can have an open dialogue with Mr. Biskin, one of the trustees.
Maybe this is the right time to announce.
I canceled them. No one has, other than my 3 boys, it's been empty. It's been coffee with Todd. So if you have questions, you're always welcome to reach out.
just super proud of them. Nice to meet you.
All right, take a break.
Well, I was talk about a lot of back.
Brochure.
Sir. Okay.
Everybody. That's almost like.
Holly, did you get the invoice as well? Did you get the invoice for the superintendent?
Oh, we got 5 pages.
Yeah. They're leaving.
This stuff's a flood.
No real thorn issues.
Huh?
No real thorn issues.
Well, there is one that said, I don't know that there's going to be any more, so you don't have any public speaking tonight. Somebody signed up. And so we.
We had a bunch of tame ducks and we tried to find the amazing when summer's coming around, but it didn't. We had 20 ducks all down the line. We hear the dogs bark, so we know they're there. That's about the only thing we do. Had 5 calves born today.
Ching ching. I was all excited because I just drove out of my driveway. I thought, it'd be great for road. I mean, it was really bad cats lined up around the people.
I think it's pretty fortunate. Very late in paying something.
Yeah, I've been something down here. Yeah, bad weather don't aren't good. You don't know. Last one, I don't know.
So every month, Kathy.
Oh, yeah.
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 Like during COVID.
The world comes from it's not cheap. Line. Yeah. One down. Yeah. Even though you don't have, in the new store, you don't have.
All right, if everybody wants to take a seat, we'll resume. The next item on the agenda, let's on this one, normally would be the public input session, but we have no one signed up for that, so we'll move to the item after that, which is unfinished business. We are going through and doing a review of district policies. We have policies 3,000 and 5,000 are currently up for review and approval. This is the what is referred to as the third reading. I understand there are no pending revisions to anything, so I would entertain a motion first for an acceptance and adoption of the policy 3000 series. Motion.
Make a motion that we accept the policies for the 3,000s and 5,000s as presented. I'll second Melissa's motion. I'll second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. It's unanimous. Motion passes. With respect to the second item, this is a second reading, however, of the revision and rewriting of the Code of Ethics and the operating procedures. These are numbered 1600, excuse me, and 1605. There are no, I understand there are no requests for any further revisions on this matter. We are able to adopt these items today if we wish. I would entertain a motion to do that. Do I hear a motion?
I'll make the motion. We accept 1600 Code of Ethics revision and 1605 operating procedures, which is new.
I second that motion. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
Motion carries. Action item, new business consent agenda to be approved in one motion. We have two blocks, as it were. We have the minutes of the previous meetings. Those meetings would be February 28th, all this year, February 28th, March 3rd, and March 10th. And then a room and board in lieu of transportation requests, which we have none of. I would entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda.
I will make a motion to approve the consent agenda.
I'll second it.
She made the motion. Please second it. Please second it.
Favor?
Aye.
Hi.
Opposed? Motion carries. And one last block of action items is new business. We have recommended new hires, resignations, non-resident open enrollment requests, and the Elk City school calendar. With respect to the recommended new hires and resignations.
I make the motion that we accept the new resignations. There's no new hires listed. We accept them as presented. I will second. I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? There's been none. Non-resident open enrollment requests. I would entertain a motion for accepting these independently. I believe there are 50 non-resident applications. This is a procedural matter with respect to, as I understand it, college students, even if they're returning, they have to, every year they have to still reapply. And I've received and read the packet, as I'm sure the rest of the board, but that's what this is here. So I would entertain a motion for accepting the non-resident packets, student numbers 23-1 through 23-50.
Very typically, Todd usually gets some
Yeah,
recommendations.
so in the motion, whoever makes the motion, so why don't you make the motion? I'm going to ask the board to not the list I'm about to give you. I'm going to give you the list by number.
Copy.
So that we won't identify any names.
Right. No names.
So you can write them down.
Yep.
2329, 23-30, 23-48, 23-49, and 23-50.
Just to repeat, 29, 30, 48, 49, and 50.
That's correct.
Thank you.
Were these new applications or?
Some were not new. Remember, there's a list of things that a principal will look at. Prior discipline history, their work ethic in school, the impacts, the cost to the district, if the district doesn't want to shoulder those financial impacts. So there could be a myriad of reasons for that. So the principals will weigh into me and to Kendra, and then we'll put the list together of the denial.
Um, 49 is a like somebody's already there. That's returning. 49.
Are you asking if they're returning? Is
Yeah.
that what you're asking me?
No, it just says they've been attending for 3 years. I just wanted to make sure that the 49 was, I got 49 down and I wanted to make sure I had the right number.
Yeah, 2349, that's correct.
Okay. Thank you.
I would make a motion that we would accept the non-resident enrollment requests except for students 23, 29, 23, 30, 23, 48, 23, 49, and 23, 50 as recommended by our superintendent and administrators.
I second that motion. I second it.
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed, motion carries. Thank you, Todd. And lastly, the Elk City calendar. We would entertain a motion to approve the Elk City school calendar for 2022-2023.
Yeah. This is already ran through the teacher and the,
Yeah, Kendra puts it together and makes certain that it meets the minute qualifications as she has a boilerplate that she would work through. And that makes
Kathy.
in the, yeah, and then the professional development piece. So we're trying to get them down here as much as possible.
I move that we accept the Elk City calendar for 22-23.
A second. All in favor?
Aye.
No opposed. Final item is possible agenda items for future board meetings. I would like to work on establishing some of what we refer to as board norms. They're just interoperational things as far as how the board does business. But that's what the workshops are for, is to go through those types of things, among other things. So that would be my request for the agenda.
Todd, what does the IC report do?
Kendra? No?
It is, it was due last Friday, the 18th. And then we'll have another submission in May and another one in June.
Thank you.
And with that, we're adjourned. That was 3 minutes.